Namaste, Jai Bharat. Pakistan is desperately trying to make the Bharat Pakistan conflict a Hindu Muslim war. If you look at many of the narratives what you find in Pakistan, they keep saying that we'll do this to Hindus, we'll do that to Hindus, etc. So they try to make it Hindu Muslim war. Why? Why? Because they think or they expect the Muslim world to support them for whatever they do. So there's no other way they say this. But they have this problem. On the one hand, you find the Hamas and Hezbollah and Houthis and people like that. They are declaring continuous hostility towards the Jews. Of course, that's there in their text, in their book, that they believe that Jews are their natural enemies. Now, they'll put anybody in that pocket. They like treat Hindus also like Jews. Of course, Hindus and Jews are exceptionally good friends, which they know very well. So they will put this Hindu-Muslim climate or Hindu-Muslim color they give, so that there are two things in it. One, they try to draw support from the Islamic world, thinking that the Islamic world will support them, which is not very likely at all. Secondly, there are a lot of large number of Muslims in Bharat, so they try to make communal conflicts in Bharat. They try means they believe, they expect they can't do it, they can do it. So they try to make Hindus and Muslims in two different things. This is precisely what the Mughals had been doing it in their time. They tried to make a distinct identity for the Muslims, make them different from Hindus. The problem of differences, creating differences among the people, someone who believes in Islam, someone who does not believe in Islam, someone who believes in other religions, they make a distinction between these two. One side is the Muslims, other side anyone else. So this had been initiated during the Mughal time. It's not the Mughal rulers who did it. It's the Mughal time intellectuals, those so-called learned people in their community. Large number nahi hai, they're a very small number of people, and they first of all started a difference in language. That is, they tried to create a synthetic language exclusively for the Muslims. And how they created it, they are not capable of creating a language at all, but they created a language in the manner that they first of all refused to use the script which is used for the Vedas and Upanishads. That's a script of Devanagari. Normally, all our languages are written either in Devanagari or related scripts, except the Dravidian South Indian scripts. The other things are either this way, that way related. Gujarati script is quite related to Devanagari, and the Bengali Assamese scripts are related to Devanagari, and Punjabi also script is related to Devanagari, though Pakistanis people don't know. So the spoken language, Pakistanis started writing in Persian script. Farsi is called Persian script. That's the first distinction they make between Hindus and Muslims. And they started writing the same language which people speak, same language. I told you they can't create a language. They started writing in a Persian script, and then they called it as Urdu, making a distinction between the Hindu language and the Muslim language. That's what they created first. Then what happened subsequently, the students, those who want to study, those supposed to go for higher learning, the Hindus normally go to Sanskrit kind of education those days, and then instead of Sanskrit they wanted to learn something. And ironically, instead of studying Arabic, the Mughal time Muslim scholars, they started studying Persian. That's precisely for one simple reason, that Farsi language, Persian, had a literature. They had translated large amount of literature mostly from Sanskrit into Farsi language. They had a literature. They had a literature per se, but that's not Islamic literature. That's the Iranian culture, Iranian civilization literature. So they had a literature. Therefore, they used Farsi or Parsi as a classical language juxtaposing Sanskrit. That's what they did. So it's normal for people in Paris to go for Sanskrit education, especially those days. That's much before the colonization began and English took place. So they started doing Farsi language. At that time, when the Hindus used to go to Pathshalas and learn Sanskrit, Vedas, Upanishads, things like that, and a lot of things for us. So many texts, Sanskrit texts are there for us to study. They are not religious texts, Panchasandra is not a religious text. Katha Saritsagara is not a religious text. There are so many stories, like Vikramaditya stories. So many stories. Upanishads are full of stories and narratives and dialogues. So they are not religious texts, but many of them are metaphysical, philosophical, epistemological, or dharmic texts like Manusmriti, the ordinances, the laws, etc. We are, and also texts on aesthetics like Natya Shastra, many such things. So these texts they translated actually to Persian. So the Hindus used to study all those things. Those who go to schools, those who were after knowledge, and the Muslim scholars they studied Persian language. And I don't know what the precise text they studied. They must have studied these texts also through Persian. I'm not sure, but they studied it through the language of Persian. Now, the situation was that, if you remember, Shankaracharya, who had gone from Kerala to Madhya Pradesh, Omkareshwar, went at the age of 8 or so, and he's supposed to have requested Govinda Bhagavad Pada to make him his student. Which language he must have spoken? He must have definitely spoken Sanskrit language. So that was the status of Sanskrit in Bharat those days. It was a common lingua franca for the educated, for the learner. They all used to speak Sanskrit. Singapore is Simhapura. They used to speak Sanskrit. So that was the situation. Now they tried to with the Mughals, the scholars among the Muslims, they tried to substitute Persian language with Sanskrit with Persian. Now that's interesting thing happened. There are so many people, those who are catalysts to the Islamic separatism. One such person is Jamaluddin Afghani, and this Jamaluddin Afghani is basically a Persian. I think one of his great grandson or someone was teaching in University of Tehran later. Details I don't know, but Afghani has nothing to do with Afghanistan. He kept the title Afghani by willfully, spuriously, to give the impression that he is a Sunni Muslim, whereas Shia Muslim is Iranians are Shias. So to hide that Shia identity, he simply put this title Afghani, which will mislead people to think he is also Sunni, so they accept him as one among them. So when he visited Bharat, Persian is his mother tongue. And the scholars in Bharat, Islamic scholars, were well versed in, very good, and they could speak, understand Iranian language of Farsi. And Afghani found it a cakewalk because he didn't have to speak any other language. Sufficient for him to speak Iranian, and that when he speaks Iranian language, that's Persian language, the scholars in Bharat thought him as a very scholarly person because he speaks such just Farsi language. That's an interesting thing I told you. When it was a cakewalk for Jamaluddin Afghani when he came, because the scholars in Bharat were already very good in Farsi. So that's kind of juxtaposition they made. So interestingly, so that differences between Hindus and Muslims were getting cooked up right in the beginning, and then of course it went on into all kinds of extensions until we reached the two-nation theory, which Jinnah refused all the way except for the Lahore Declaration. That's the only time when he uses the word Pakistan. His ideas were different. His ideas were to keep Muslims in Bharat and take the best of Bharat. That was an ideal situation, keeping the welfare of Muslims in his mind. He was a sensible man, undoubtedly, but he was on the side of Muslims and exclusively for the Muslims. So he wanted that situation, but then the people wanted two nations. They had been using the Hindu-Muslim cards right from the period of Mughal, and that same thing Pakistan is doing today. Asim Munir, of course, I don't know whether he is there or not these days. A couple of days after this conflict started between Bharat and Pakistan, Munir is not to be seen in the media. I don't know. People have all kinds of speculation, because let's not fall for speculations during conflict times. Anybody can say anything and everybody says everything and no one takes them serious. That's also there. No one takes them serious except those who are willing to make selective acceptance and rejections depending upon their convenience. The criteria is always convenience for such kind of situations. So Asim Munir has spoken about Hindu-Muslim divide. Asim Munir has tried to divide the two-nation theory, all because he wanted to give a Hindu-Muslim dimension to the existing difference between Pakistan and Bharat, and with the hope, now it's with the hope to get the support of 57 or 54, I don't know, Islamic nations, which doesn't happen. Obviously, it doesn't happen. Times have changed. Even in the past, it's not the case. Or everyone won't support Pakistan because people do understand why people are using communal cards, which is keeping the sentiments. As desideratum, trying to use religion for their personal interest. Actually, they are using religion which they should not. Anyone should not use religion for political reasons, for getting into power, etc. But people have been using it right in the past also, and people still keep doing it every time. So this is what Pakistan is trying to give. A Hindu-Muslim fight it is, and this of course gives them a lot of support within Pakistan, because they would consider it as a holy war, jihad, and all kinds of stories, and they can do anything through the concept of taqiyya, all those things they can do. But this is what's happening. They are trying to get this, and they have this very desperate hope that Muslims in Bharat will have some soft corner for people in Pakistan, but that's really not the case, because people understand. Nowadays people understand, even in past also, people used to understand deceptions, deceits and lies. People used to understand, and they thrive on lies and deceit. And lies and this is temporary. They can't do it for a longer time. Let's see. This is coming to. I think there's a possibility of a ceasefire. I mean, not exactly ceasefire, keeping the conflict in abeyance for temporary until further provocations. So there's a possibility that I think it's announced about 20 or 15 minutes before. Let's see what happens, and we shall meet again. Till then, Namaste, Jai Bharat, Jai Sri Ram.